stories. I'm Julien Hoez. I'm hilariously overdressed compared to the rest of my panelists. So thank you guys for making me look way too serious. And well, I mean, I guess the easiest way to start this off, even though I'm sure you already know the panel already, is to ask Claudio, Claudia, Tomas, and Robert to introduce themselves one by one. So we'll start with Robert.
Hello, my name is Robert Riemann, and I work for the European Data Protection Supervisor. And I'm involved in beta because I did a Model European Union in Strasbourg in 2015, and I liked it a lot, and I decided to help out afterwards. And then I was working first in the IT for some time, and since last year or so, I'm a beta trustee.
Claudia?
Hello, everyone. Most set phrase of 2020. Can you hear me? Perfect. So hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on when you are, where you are. My name is Claudio. I am currently in Brussels working at the Portuguese Permanent Representation to the EU, preparing the Council presidency of the next semester. I started in the Model EU. This is going to be quite a similar topic, so do keep up. In Model European Union Strasbourg as a participant into 2014, got really excited about it, stayed on and organized it 3 years, then was BT Europe president, and now I'm a BT Europe trustee, like alongside Robert.
Claudia?
Hello, everyone. My name is Claudia Gherman. I'm currently a public affairs manager at a lobbying firm here in Brussels. I've been working for the past 5 years here in Brussels in-house, in trade associations, consultancy, following dossier in healthcare and tech. At I wasn't really involved with beta, so I will only refer to MEU. At MEU, I was a participant as a lobbyist in 2013 and a lobbyist coordinator in 2017. I hope I'm right. Yes.
And last but not least, Tomas.
Hello, my name is Tomas. I've been working in the European Parliament for the past 4 years as an assistant of Czech MEP Tomas Dvorak. I'm mostly following employment agenda and budgetary control. For the MEUs, I started in 2014 in MEU Belgrade, and then 2 years later, I joined organizing team of MEU Strasbourg. I was deputy director of 2017 edition, and I had a chance to cooperate with Robert, Claudia, and Claudio in that team. Later that I co-founded Beta Czech Republic, which haven't been really active yet, except of organizing one symposium, but this is a promise that we will be more active in the future.
Perfect. All right. So that's for panelists. So I guess the first question I'm going to ask everybody, which is possibly one of the more interesting ones, is what was everybody's first MEU experience and what got people interested in these events in the first place? I mean, I know that I think I've done maybe 2 MEUs, and I know Claudio's been around for about 20 years at this point. So it would be interesting to find out what these were like back in '99.
Okay. I cannot really help you with 1999, but I will try to give my best input on that. So 2014 was my first MEU, so not that long ago, but for some people way long ago. And that was my first experience. What got me interested in the event, to be honest, is as simple as a picture on Facebook. I think that's a common thing. A friend of mine was there the previous year, posted it online, thought this sounds cool, checked out the event. I thought it was amazing. So I decided, yeah, what the hell, probably not gonna get in anyway, but I have nothing to lose. Fortunately, I was accepted, and the experience was absolutely fantastic. I mean, your first MEU is always a special one, but being a proof of fire like it is being in a room in the parliament, in this case with 100 people, it's overwhelming. And when you actually, you go in there, you think it's not really something you can do, and then you, after the whole week, you come out of there like this boost of confidence. You actually manage to enjoy it and step up to the plate and be up for it. And it was a great event. And to be honest, it fundamentally changed my perception of the EU per se, because before I wasn't really that into EU at all. As in no way, never I ever imagined specializing in EU law. Never crossed my mind. And afterwards, I actually got more interested about this topic, about this particular, not just field of law, but the whole thing around European politics. So that definitely was a game changer for me, and I think that's something that a lot of people can relate with. And I just thought, I have to come back. I have to come back. So I just applied to be an organizer, got to go back for 3 more amazing years, and the rest, well, it's history, as they say. I'll stop here.
And Tomas, how was it that you got into your first MEU experience, and when was it exactly?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that before we started, and I think it was second year of my bachelor studies. I was studying European studies, and it was way too theoretical for me, and I realized I want to do something more practical. And I actually cannot remember how I heard about the MEU concept, but I remember myself Googling that. And the first MEU which I found was MEU Strasbourg. And I checked some videos, I checked the website, and at that point I was like, oh my God, this is way too professional. I cannot go there. And so I kept looking. The funny thing is that in less than 3 years, I was leading the organizing team for MEU Strasbourg. But at that point in 2014, I found MEU Belgrade, which was at that point, I think, one of the biggest MEUs. And it was an amazing experience. And I already developed some network of people there, including Stefan Živkovic, who 1 year later brought me to the organizing team of MEU Strasbourg.
Robert, what is it that got you into this experience, we'll say?
So I started much, I hear for Thomas it was already doing his bachelor studies. I finished a bachelor and a master in physics and started then in France a PhD on computational election systems. And you have to get these credit points in something outside of your courses. So I imagine this is when social scientists do Excel classes provided by the university. And I looked into the offers of my university and decided to not do Excel classes. And yeah, I got the chance to go to the Council of Europe first and attended a conference on, I think it was called the World Forum of Democracy. And I think it was because of them that I met many people interested in politics and the European Union and democratic decision-making, that there was either a booth of people from Model European Strasbourg, or that through their Facebook group, in which I sneaked in, because it was not only, it was actually a group not meant for people who would come just for the conference, but for those who did an entire program at the Council of Europe. And by that incident, I learned about Model European Union, and I asked my PhD supervisor if I could not also get some credit points by attending this conference, which seemed to be much more interesting than doing a course on Excel. And I got approval and was fortunately accepted to go there. And then I went to Model European Strasbourg and liked it a lot. I was surprised how many people from the STEM fields were present. And I thought, we need more voices from people that have another background and social science. And that's why I decided to stay together with Beta, and helped also to organize together with Beta Europe other conferences afterwards.
Okay, I mean, while I want to pick up on how exactly doing a PhD in computational science got you interested in European politics, I think that first I'll go to Claudia and then I'll ask you guys to just tell us how this affected your perception of Europe or the European Union in general.
Let me, I'm much older than all of you, obviously. It was in 2013. I actually came across MEU by chance on Facebook, just scrolling down. So Facebook sometimes helps. And well, after that, after I went to the MEU, I actually did not pursue any professional experience in this field. Actually, I went to another domain, to headhunting. But then my mind stayed on with EU and EU politics, and obviously the experience, the MEU experience was weighed in a lot. And I decided to move to Brussels and use whatever theoretical knowledge and hands-on experience I had from the past, and start in public affairs. So yeah, it had a I would say a fairly important influence on my choice to go on and find a job in public affairs.
And did it push you to look purely at Brussels, for example, or were you looking in general at whatever was related to Europe when you were looking for public affairs roles?
At that point, well, you'll find out later on that networking is the most important thing at MEU. So at that point, I was in touch with many of my fellow MEU participants, and a bunch of them were here in Brussels, and they were like, okay, join us. And I said, yeah, I'm going to join you. So I moved from Czech Republic, where I was working in headhunting, to Brussels. So to come and meet my the bunch of MEU people. So it was it was mostly like the network behind MEU, not MEU per se, that got me here.
Okay, so for you it was mostly about making the contacts and the friends that you did that actually pushed you towards your career in general.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, particularly as Claudio works at the permanent representation of Portugal to the EU, was this a similar experience for you? Like these relationships pushed you towards this, or was it more something that just happened by accident, by chance, because the bubble just burst for a second and you managed to slip in somehow? Like, how did that happen?
Actually, I would think it's a mixture of both. Because I mean, fundamentally, as I said before, I had no intention. I mean, I was doing it was my last year of bachelor's. I had EU law like my second year, and I absolutely detested it. I mean, I cannot express how much I hated it.
Same.
Then I thought, okay, this is interesting. I want more. And the I want more, it wasn't just an experience, a theoretical experience per se. It wasn't just because I read the regulation that happened to be the legislative proposal, and I thought, oh, so cool, 30 something pages of fun. No, it wasn't that, of course. So it was the relationships with the people, the international environment, the like-minded set that everyone kind of has. It was the sharing of a particular interest. So it was a lot about law, but it was mostly about politics. And it was mostly about people, the environments, and that's how I decided to specialize in law, studying abroad. So it was I basically went an MEU of not of a week, but of a year. And that's why I went studying abroad. So I specialized it, and that's pretty much what happens when you specialize in a particular field. Is that it better be something that you're good at, and better be something that there's jobs for. And fortunately, that I can complain about it. So when you actually specialize in law, and you actually study the kind of masters that you do, the market actually has possibilities for you. Whether you like or not, it's the bubble. So I think it's not a matter of when if the bubble bursts. It's a matter that the bubble hardly bursts once you're in, because if you're in, you're in. It's like, you can check out, but you can never leave. It's exactly like that. And once you're in, and that's what you're good at, and that's what you're specialized for, and that's what your resume basically screams out. So I then got a traineeship in Brussels. I did go home for a period of 2 years because I got an offer from a law firm. And I think that was pretty much the deciding moment for me, because that was the deciding moment when I was like, okay, I studied this, but now I got an offer to go back home. So should I stay? Should I go? What should I do? And when the moment came to decide, I decided that I no longer fitted in this kind of mindset. I could no longer fit in this kind of work environment, and I definitely did not fit in the kind of work I was being asked to do. So in that moment, I really thought to myself, I need to go back, because this is not just what I like to do, but it's also where I feel good. So the opportunity then, that's when the luck comes in. Presidencies don't happen every day. So the opportunity came into the opportunity arose to actually apply for the Foreign Office, because they were hiring for the presidency, and that was the break one needed, and thankfully I'm here. So I would say it's a bit of both.
Slight technical malfunction. So for you, it was really an experience that you experienced Brussels. You did all this work within the institutions. And then when you started going back to effectively what we can say the non-European working sphere, you just lost an interest, didn't feel you fit into that environment anymore. And I mean, having worked in Brussels as well, I can sympathize with that entirely. So for me, I'd quite be interested in what Tomas thinks, or how his view of working outside of Brussels prior to working in Brussels, and whether he had any experiences in between, how that affected your mentality, and the same for Robert as well, actually.
Yeah, I can basically echo what Claudia was saying. For me, it was pretty much the same path. Like, I started traineeship in Brussels, then I got a full-time contract for 1 year here, and it was in 2017-18, and then I was considering whether I should go back or not. And I went back to the Czech Republic because at that point I haven't finished my master's, so I went back. And first months after living 2 years in Brussels, it was very difficult, and I already realized that I want to go back. So I started to work as a local assistant of my MP, and I was handling the campaign before the European elections, with the view that if the elections will be successful, I will go back to Brussels. And now I'm back here, and at this point I think I will still stay here definitely for a couple of more years.
Yeah, I think my path was a bit different, because I hear that many of you are EU experts, and I would never say that I'm an EU expert, even though I'm working for a European Union institution. So I think you should know that there are many specialists working for the EU institutions that have not studied international relations or policy making, that are just experts in a very particular field. And the European Data Protection Supervisor has many experts on data protection law. Some of them also know EU law, not all of them. And they, in the office, we also have experts in technology. And I never planned actually to work for an EU institution. It is just that I learned about the EDPS because when I was doing the Model European Union in Strasbourg, we were working on the GDPR. So I gave it a bit more reflection on how the institutions work with the GDPR on data protection. And when I was about to finish my PhD, I just sent an application to the EDPS to become a trainee there, to see how not the technology part, but the policy part would also complement all the ideas and strengths towards data protection. And I got immediately accepted because there's a shortage in some areas, such as technical data protection. So this is why I also would say it was certainly not my network that was helping me getting a job in Brussels. I think it was rather to have access to information, because there was nobody going to the universities and explaining, hey, we also need technical experts in the EU institutions. This does not happen, or rarely. And so it is rather that thanks to Beta, I met many people that helped me to find out my way through the websites, to be curious, to check the websites myself. And thanks to that, I did not miss out the application deadline. And I'm very grateful for that. And I think this is also an effect, but it is not like I decided at some point I have to work for Brussels. And then I decided to study something that seems rather obvious. It was totally not like this. And I also did not plan to stay. So this all also just happened. But for the time being, I'm very happy with how it turned out. And it is very interesting here. And I'm also glad to work with so many people that have done something else. So I'm learning now, of course, so many things from all those people that have indeed studied EU law or similar fields.
Well, and I mean, I'm quite surprised that everybody seems to have similar things that they're saying regarding the fact that a part of it was luck, effectively, that we stumbled into this passion for European affairs, and we stumbled into a lot of these jobs that we found. And I guess one of the more interesting questions for the participants here, who are all quite young, who are still looking to get their foot on the ladder at some point, is do any of you think that aside from making contacts, do we develop skills through going to MEUs? Are MEUs more about just the evening drinks every day, or do participants bring more expertise themselves to MEUs and help MEUs to develop and become better? Because, I mean, for example, coming to an MEU myself as a European expert already, there were things that I felt that I could have brought, but that I also learned from MEUs themselves. So I'm quite interested by what the rest of you think, really. I mean, I guess we can start with Robert, and Robert was just speaking.
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult question. I don't like the idea to say you need luck to get into the EU institutions. I think if you have a profile that is not very distinct and specialized, that means you have a more broader competition. And then in whatever promising job you would like to end up, you need some luck. So this is not special. I don't think that it needs more luck to work for the EU institution than working for Hollywood, let's say, or any other challenging career that many people aim for. So that is something very important to me to say. And then again, I think if you are lucky and you decided years ago to study a field that then becomes very needed, of course you have an advantage when people cannot just quickly study that field as well to enter the competition. And something that I also would like to mention is that I think it is a wrong idea to let people know, yeah, please, it's so cool, work for the EU institution, then you can change the world. I think the EU is so much broader, and there's not only the EU institutions, and everyone who's contributing also in the member states will have an impact on how we live in Europe. And it is important to find out where you can have your impact, where can you work the most efficient. And certainly there are many people who work for institutions who find out that they have very little impact. And among the first weeks when I arrived in Brussels, there was a journalist warning me that all your engagement and what you aim for can be quite hampered being part of a huge institution that is much slower by definition than any startup or small NGO can be. And I see so many great things outside of Brussels happening, pushing and making major changes to e-policies. One example is the NGO NOYB of Max Schrems, who just pulled down twice data protection adequacy agreement with the United States. So this is something we could not have done here. So
just to go back to the question I asked, do MEUs actually give participants concrete experiences? I mean, that was all very interesting, but let's stick to what MEUs give participants.
I mean,
and
I think it is very
whether
important
MEUs actually have an impact. I mean, for example, we could even extend that to, I mean, not only to participants, but to the wider communities. Does beta actually have an impact? Is it actually useful to people trying to get into the EU? Because we're talking mostly about what MEUs bring our participants. For example, not necessarily the wonderful things in the EU, which I can guarantee that all the people here are already well aware of. But we need to explain to these people, are MEUs actually useful?
I mean, to make it short, I think they're super useful. I think it is useful for everything. It is not very especially more useful to get an EU job to get any other similar job. I think public speaking and all the soft skills are generally nice, and that may not help you to have like a competitional advantage concerning another person who has not done a model EU, because there's so many other ways on getting these soft skills as well.
Of course, and I mean, Claudio, what do you think about this kind of the impact that experience from MEUs can have on your career and your actual professional skills?
Well, I actually wanted to agree.
Is Claudio or Claudia?
Yeah.
You have to stress the end of the name.
Claudio first, Claudia second.
All right.
Let's make this easy. Claudio.
Claudio, okay.
Perfect. Okay, that will help us. Thank you very much for that question, because I agree with Robert 100%, and I think I would like to make a small bridgehead here, basically to say what he made, the point Robert made, is essential, and I think can be encapsulated by one word, which is differentiation. You need to be different. The competition is so fierce for such a small number of positions. Especially today, I know everyone is tired of hearing this. Right? The labor market is saturated, and there's so many people with the same degrees, and everyone has degrees these days. But when it comes to the EU, it really is a very, very narrow field of specialization. There's a very, very narrow number of competences that are needed, and there is a huge continental. This is, I think that for once, this term is not being exaggerated here. Continental competition for these jobs. So you need to be different. And anything that makes you different is an asset. As long as it's on a criminal record, of course, let's make sure. But everything that's positively different about you is perfect, is great. And MEUs are a part of this. They are something that manifestly can differentiate you from others. There is a whole other debate that I think it's for other workshops, and I think it's already being handled quite well by what I'm seeing. So shout out to the organizing team, kudos, which is how to sell MEUs, or what's the perception of MEUs. It's not for us to get into that right now. What I can say is, if you can show off the soft skills you gain from MEUs, if you can transmit this on a job interview and show the obvious, but not so obvious to your employer or prospective employer, connection with the real EU, if you can make this connection from model to real EU, it is an asset. Of course, not to say what Robert just explained. You do need a good style basis education. You do need some specialization on a field that is related. But then again, then you get to the same threshold. Okay, but that doesn't get you across the finish line. These days, everyone has a degree, everyone has a specialization. So that's the starting point. The rest, everything makes you different. And MEUs can be that. But MEUs, I would say, I would use it in a very broad sense, which is the full experience. It's not just participating in a conference and just have the certificate. It's really diving into it. In Strasbourg, when I was a participant, they kept saying this phrase, it got stuck in my head, the more you dive into the conference, the more you'll get out of it. And this is true not just in the conference, but in life. If you actually come back as an organizer and you start working in a professional, semi-professional, international association, you learn everything from working on Excel sheets to word skills, to team management, to team leadership, to financial skills, everything that is basically being debated in this symposium so far. You learn that before you even get to the job market, to actually have a real job, and that is valued. That is NGO expertise, which is valued and it will be valued. And to finish up, because I'm already taking way too much time, when it came to my job interview for the current job, this was totally a part of it. A specific case was asked to me, and I gave a concrete response with an example of a crisis situation in an MEU. Sorry to say it was MEU Strasbourg. Adverts, ping, ping. And it was one of the strong suits of the interview. It got like 10 follow-ups, and it got real fascination from the employer, because this is not something they're used to hearing about. And you're actually explaining, going into detail what we actually do here. It's very, very valuable. So I would say yes, definitely. It is a part of it. It is valued, but it also depends of your degree of of interaction, of your degree of engagement, and how much you took out of it. Because, you know, at the end of the day, you do need to show you have those skills.
And I mean, it's, as we all know, it's very easy to just turn up to an MEU and not really do anything and just sort of coast. But as Claudio just highlighted, it is important to take part. And I'd like to hear what Claudia has to say about this as well. And I'd also like to add one question I just received from Yogam in the audience, which is, what would be your one lesson from participating in MEUs that has directly helped you in your current job?
Maybe I can be a bit more applied than my fellow speakers. I haven't worked in institutions. I only worked in the private sector. And as I said, I worked for a company, trade association, consultancy. And so maybe I can actually share with you how I leveraged my participation in MEU when I actually got my first job. And what I did, so when I had the interview, I remember with a couple of people here in Brussels, I always highlighted that I know how the European institutions work, like my hands-on experience, because at MEU, I had to deal with council ministers, I had to deal with MEPs, I had to deal with journalists. So I leveraged this hands-on experience. Then another very important thing here in Brussels, networking matters, and especially when it comes to lobbying. I'm a lobbyist. And so this is another aspect that I also leveraged the fact that I know how to network. Yeah, I have, you have to become personable. You need to know how to listen to to many other views, which is also a skill that I developed at MEU, speaking with so many people, with so many views, so many perspectives. It's not always about you saying what you think. And so, also, the fact that I already had a couple of people here in Brussels, some of them were MEP assistants, some of them were working in consultancies. It helped me say that I have a network in Brussels already. And that's also an advantage. And I think I also answered the question that you just asked with what you take out of MEU in terms of skills. I hope so.
No, you did. You did a good job of answering it too. And Tomas, I'd like to know what you think. Like, how did your experiences participating in these conferences actually help you develop to be someone who was more effective at your job, or do you think that it had very little effect?
Yeah, I basically agree what Robert, Claudia, and Claudio already said. For me, like the biggest skill which I got at MEU is public speaking, because I'm introvert. I've always been the smart kid at primary school, high school, who doesn't speak much. And MEUs really helped me like to speak publicly without any fear, to defend my opinion and so on. And I remember myself in Belgrade in 2014, I spoke like 2 or 3 times in 3-4 days. But still, it was a big experience for me, and then I developed it. And I remember then when I started a traineeship in the European Parliament, my colleague asked me if I want to go to the shadow meeting with her. And after 10 minutes of looking at the shadow meeting, I was asking her if this is for real, because like the level of the negotiating there was way below like average negotiating at MEU level. So it was a huge surprise, and it still is for me, because now I'm working on like 5 or 6 files, and I basically have a shadow or technical meeting every day, and the quality is sometimes terrible. So negotiating and defending opinion was definitely the biggest skill which I got at MEUs. And also then when I did different interviews, you are usually asked a lot of questions about different situations and so on. And as Claudio said, MEU, and especially the organizing part of MEU is really great to illustrate different solving of issues and cases and so on.
And Robert, how did these experiences help or give you more skills that made you more able? I mean, because you came into this at the end of, towards the end of a PhD, so you already had quite a lot of experience in much of what MEUs can give you, but how did it reinforce your experiences?
I mean, I did not have an actual education in how the EU works, before I did Model European Union in Strasbourg. And so basically everything I learned about the European Union, or a large part of it, I know from that conference. And of course, I stumble sometimes into conferences at work and meetings where people discuss the legislation and the proposals, and it's good to have an idea of what they actually mean by this.
All right, and I guess the next question, which I'm sure, well, I've heard from a number of people that are quite interested to hear about what our panelists have to say about this. So considering that everybody here is involved with Beta Europe in some way, shape or form, aside from Claudia, if all of you had a choice in how to redevelop the MEU concept and make it more realistic, or how would you approach this? I mean, what would you say would be most important to add to MEUs for a number of the organizers who are here trying to steal your ideas? What would you add to the concept, and how would you change the concept and the way it works to make it really, truly more representative of what happens in reality, or more helpful to, for example, more technical aspects of the EU functionality, or the more lobbying aspects, or even the more diplomatic aspects? I guess we can start with Claudio this time. Or Claudio.
Was that a you? That's me.
That was a you.
That was a you.
Yeah.
It's not me, you. Okay.
No, it's not me, it's you.
I know, but it's still too early. Okay. I think I would like to maybe go back a bit what Tomas said. I think, and I think it connects with your question here. We need to redefine what realism is, because when you actually come to real, what Tomas says is absolutely true. I mean, sometimes when you get here and you see what, in my case, he has a parliament experience, so I'm in this case, council experience, I can totally relate what Tomas just said. I mean, it's sometimes it's and just underline, I'm speaking here in my personal capacity, and it's being recorded, so personal capacity only. And my personal opinion is that sometimes it's really, really challenging, to say the least. I've seen sessions of MEU that are, in theory, far more realist, professional, according to what our standards as MEU organizers in theory are, than what actually is in real life. So I think that there needs to be an adjustment of what our expectations is. So the level of sometimes simplicity of things, of informality that we have, of direct speaking, it's very, very, very useful for people, organizers to understand that, sometimes when they think, oh my God, we're doing this wrong because we're not being formal enough. And normally the comparison point is always MEUs, they are so formal, they are so, and sometimes I think we need to, lower the threshold a bit and realize that we need to search for realism elsewhere. It's not on formality. It's not here. It's on content. It's on substance. That's where, if we invest more, we will be more realist. It's not on the formality of procedures. And sometimes I have to say, and I think this was addressed in the previous workshop, rules of procedure. There was a time, yes, I think the rules of procedure were stricter than the real life. So in MEU Yash, and I think this was firmed up by the Beta Europe think tank, we rewrote the rules of procedure precisely to make them more accessible to first-time participants, to be more accessible to everyone that is basically a first-timer and doesn't have that contact with the EU, just like in case of Robert, for instance. But at the same time, when doing this, we realized that by simplifying, we weren't going against the rules of procedure, we were actually going towards them, because they're actually far more simple to engage. So that would be my first thought on this, and my main thought on it. And I'll stop here because I'm already extending my time.
So it's more a case of not necessarily trying to make it overly realistic, but making it more accessible to the average person who may not have the massive experiences of EU and who may not be getting involved purely because they want to go through complex rules of procedure. It's more about making it work easier.
Can I follow up on that just to make it clear?
Yeah.
I mean, to give you a quick example, I mean, especially in council, you have people from, let's say, in this case, Lisbon, experts parachuting into Brussels to meetings to give a concrete standpoint. They have no idea how the EU works. I'm sorry. I mean, most of the times, you know, like, and I'm saying mine, everyone's like, these people are very specifically, you know, good at a particular area of knowledge, and they're coming here to give a technical expertise. They're a part of the process. They don't know how the EU works. They're not supposed to. It should be accessible enough to just like it is in real life for someone just to come in and be a part of the process. What matters is the substance. What matters is the content. In terms of formality, sure, you need to follow rules of procedure. Sure, people need to understand how the EU works. That's what MEUs are all about. And sometimes you need to be more educational. And so sometimes you do need to give more complexity to it. Sure, I'm not invalidating that. Yet, I think that sometimes there is an excessive formality to it. And that means sometimes it looks more like MUNs than actually MEUs. And I think that's what MEUs are all about. We are not MUNs because we are simpler, we're more open, we're more accessible. And that is how the actual EU is as well. And I think this is what needs to be highlighted now that we are in a position to do so, especially in this panel.
And I think we should also highlight that MEUs are definitely a lot more fun than MUNs anyway. But going back to the point that, I mean, what you said there was quite interesting because you basically echoed what Robert said about the fact that it's not just purely about the Brussels bubble being engaged in European politics. There's also all these experts from outside who don't necessarily know, care, or really think that what happens in Brussels really matters all that much. So, I mean, based on that, I'd like to hear what Robert thinks about how, taking that into consideration, taking your own experiences into consideration, how do you think we could make the MEU concept better, we'll say?
I was considering if when Claudio meant about these experts that have no clue about EU, or if he meant me as well or not. But yeah, anyway, I know many other things, and I'm not the best person to judge if the model European Union is really enough, also because I'm not working directly for the inside the Commission or the Council, so I don't have the same perspective as Claudio. I think I just skip the question, but I would just like to remind you that it is maybe not only about making it as real as possible, but also as accessible as possible for the participants. If it is really real and people will just need to wait because things are postponed, like it is often the case in reality, people will not learn so much. And it could be quite boring. So maybe we should need to strike the balance here also between making it a fun and a conference where people learn a lot, and still keeping it as real as possible.
And Claudia, what do you think about this? I mean, from someone who, like Robert, doesn't work within any of the institutions, is there any way that you, in your experience and with your knowledge now, would change an MEU to maybe help people to maybe get more jobs in public affairs or some form of consultancy work?
Actually, I wouldn't change much about, well, on the lobbying side in MEU. I think I got a great deal of knowledge and hands-on experience with what's happening there, like just to observe what the other ones were doing. And I also agree with what Claudio said. I think it's not about, yeah, we have to make it a bit less formal. And when I was a lobbyist coordinator, we actually had, the team of lobbyists had a bit of fun in the parliament, and they made a lot of noise with a proposal, and they were kicked out of the parliament. That doesn't happen in real life, but that was fun. And yeah, it's sort of, it was in the news, you know, in the MEU news as well, in the newsletter. And I think that's where we have to be a bit more, to pay a bit more attention to the fun of it. And obviously, this also comes from coordinators, the organizers, and, you know, just to let the participants know that they can have fun with it, as long as they stay between, you know, legal boundaries or like the parliament boundaries. But I wouldn't change much on my side.
Yeah. Okay. And Tomas, what's your view on this? Would you change MEUs? Would you maybe slightly edit it? Would you just leave it as is? What's your opinion?
I wouldn't really change it. Maybe what I would focus on is to get as diverse participant as possible, because I really like Robert's story, how he got to MEUs, and I think there are a lot of people who normally wouldn't consider working for EU or its agencies in different areas, chemistry, environment, industry, and so on. And I think this MEU experience could really change their opinion. So being organizer now of some MEU, I would definitely focus much more on accessing people from different majors.
Okay, and before we go to some questions from the audience, and if anybody has any that they'd like to ask, just send me a quick message and I'll ask the panelists once we're done with this question. In all of your opinions, what is wrong with the EU right now? I mean, let's take into consideration, or like, let's say, what's your biggest issue with the EU right now? I mean, everybody's aware of the rule of law fight with Poland and Hungary versus everyone else, which is turning into a funding free-for-all on a very important budget issue. So, but if not that, what would you say is the biggest problem with the EU right now? And what would you want to do what would you say we should be doing to fix this? Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, I start first, so everyone afterwards with more knowledge about you can correct me. So I feel like we could do so much more if the head of states would have the support of their citizens. I think many people are just not done because the head of states feel they will get a punishment in the next election, and therefore we cannot have more collaboration within the European Union. And I think that's sad. And the only way to fix that is to convince and to explain to citizens how the EU works and its potential. And that's why I think BETA has a good idea how to contribute to that. And we should continue to do our work and upscale and involve much more people.
Of course. And Claudia, what do you think about the EU's biggest problem? And I agree 100% with Robert on education. I mean, having been someone who worked throughout the Brexit process, the level of education in the UK was horrifying, and we saw the results. So education is important. But Claudia?
I actually agree with Robert when he says that EU doesn't seem close enough to people at home. And whenever I go back, I'm Romanian, and whenever I go back to Romania and speak to even my friends or my parents, they don't understand the EU at all. Like there's no connection. Besides what I tell them, like when we have a family dinner and I speak about the EU, uninteresting basically, they don't know anything else. And I think there should be more efforts put into this. If you ask me how, I don't know. Like, for example, you have the representations, the Commission representations or the EP representations in Bucharest, in like capitals. I don't know how they should do more, but that's what I would improve, I would say. I think I'll continue to think about it, and if something else comes up in my mind, I'll let you know.
Of course. And Claudio, what do you think about the biggest issue in the EU right now? Do you agree with everybody else that it's education or just not being far enough? Or
Yeah, yes, I agree 100% what has already been mentioned. And I think to underline that exactly, BETA has a huge role to play. I think this due to associations like these that we can, let's say, burst the bubble a bit and actually, make people not just learn Europe from textbooks, because apparently that's not good enough, but to live it. And that's the only way of actually doing it. And all the studies show that people who've been abroad, studied abroad, who go abroad, have a different understanding of themselves and the other, and a bigger, let's say, ability to feel European than those who have obviously left their country. Not surprising at all. So the role of associations like us is fundamental and key more than ever. On a more institutional reply to your question, I think that, and let me underline this again, I'm speaking purely in my personal capacity. I don't know is the actual answer that Claudia gave, and is the actual answer that should be now in everyone's mind, because before at least we had a roadmap. We had a roadmap on how to make the EU more democratic, on how to move towards a bigger connection between those who are elected and those who elected. And now, due to the failure, I would say, of the Spitzenkandidaten process and the current situation in how we find ourselves, that the institutions have chosen their leaders, I think everyone who shares, let's say, our universe is a bit, it's a bit lost in trying to come back from this blow that was the apparent interruption towards a more I wouldn't say democratization, because the EU is indeed democratic, but towards a more European politics level democratization, political democratization of Europe. And I think, and this is personally my opinion, I think that it is only by including citizens, not in random dialogues or in occasional consultations, that you get there. You get them by making them feel a part of the same political community, and making them by actually feel that they can hold their leaders accountable on a European level. And until that happens, I think we will always have this blame shifting from national to the European level. It's just unavoidable. But how do we get back on track? That's an excellent question, and I think it's still going to take some time to bring us back from this. But I think the European Parliament plays a key role, and this is when I would like to pass on the potato to Tomas, because I think he will have a very good input on this.
Tomas?
Yeah, well, it's a tough question, and it would need a whole new big discussion. But what I would like to say, pretty much the same as Claudia and Claudio, like coming from the Czech Republic, where citizens are really skeptical about EU. I think the main message, if I take it from this perspective, which every participant of MEU should bring back to society, is to spread the message how the EU works, because I see it every day when I go back to Czech Republic. Most of my friends with university degree cannot say the difference between the Parliament, Commission, and the Council. The same goes with my parents and so on. So it's kind of attachment to the idea of European Union. I think all of us saw the memes about the EU, about the US elections, where people are discussing really details of what is happening at the US, but they are not able to say what's the difference between the Council and the European Council. So yeah, sorry for not answering the really the question, what is the biggest problem, but I think we all got the idea of what we think.
If I can add to that, like I actually brought my parents here in Brussels, took them to every institution, explained to them, they didn't know anything about it the next day. So I think we need to simplify it much more for them. And
yeah.
And actually, as Tomas said, like to actually make them feel European, I think this is much more important than anything else. How do you make them feel more European? I don't have an answer, but I'm asking the question.
Yeah, and there may be a question that it's a generational thing where, because we're the first to grow up effectively within the EU, we have that feeling of being more European than our parents maybe did. And again, I remember after Brexit, a lot of people, when I was telling them, oh, you can learn about the EU through MEUs or like just reading Euractiv or whatever, a lot of these people weren't exposed to these concepts at all. So they had no way of learning about these things or knowing what the difference between the COE or C of the E were. However, that's the end of the pre-planned questions for this panel. I have two questions right now from the audience. So the first one from Finley in Scotland, 22 years old. Are there ways in which MEUs can prioritize the networking aspects of the conferences? And another question that's quite similar to this from Valeria is, how much does work experience count when you're applying for traineeships into the EU institutions? So a number of you can answer that question. So I guess we'll start off with Claudio in this.
Thanks for the hot potato. To the young Finley, I would say that it is very, very, very important. I would say not in the networking perspective, because I hate to say this, but this is a word I particularly hate. Networking and networking events, and I'm sorry, but nothing compares to an event that doesn't need to be called a networking event for it to actually take place. And I think that's the importance of MEUs. You're not networking, you're befriending people. You're getting to know them, you're getting to be friendly with them. you get to buy a couple of beers or non-alcoholic beverages, depending on preferences. and you get to be more open through it, and you get to actually know people. I think this is the key of the MEU success, and I think this is the basis for an effective to get an effective return of what you would call networking, because networking is like, it's like fishing. So there's a lot of water in the ocean. There's even more fishes, but there's a lot of fishes. There are way more fishes, but there's a lot of water. What MEU does, it basically puts you fishing in a barrel, because the technique is completely different. So I think, although I do understand that more networking probably should be a priority for MEUs, because it is important to know people, especially now in pandemic times, where social events just purely don't happen. I do think that MEU should not lose this particular, I think it's essentially part of its soul, which is how it brings people together. So yes, more socials, yes. More more beers, yes. More nights out, yes. More coffee breaks, yes. Without destroying the content, without harming the substance of the conference, but a lot more of this. But caution when it comes to very formal, very strict ways of networking that sometimes are, as I said before, too formal. I can use this connection to what MEU actually is.
And Claudia, what do you think?
Yeah, maybe I can add to that the fact that, so I agree with Claudia. So networking is not really just networking, fishing, going off for fishing. No, networking is much more than that. And maybe you can define the word network, or like what we understand by network. So when you network with someone, actually, first, you learn how to listen to what the other people are saying, to accept their opinion, then how to express your opinion without, in a nice manner. And that can be done whilst, I don't know, in a break when MEPs are just debating something. I remember from my time, for example, that some of my colleagues were in a Romanian bubble. This is a massive disadvantage at MEU, because some people have the tendency to stay in their national bubble. And I think that also needed to be broken, sort of. And I remember some of my colleagues, Romanian colleagues, they were saying afterwards, like, oh, how did you become friends with all these people? Like, non-Romanian, like, yeah, well, I didn't stay in my bubble. So you need to get out of your bubble, the national bubble, first of all. And then you need to see every encounter as an opportunity to network, not only drinks or going out partying. I'm not a big party person, for example, but I was enjoying when an MEP had a moment of breath, like they took a bit of breath while, I don't know, debating some stuff.
And Robert, what do you think about the ways in which MEUs should or maybe should not prioritize networking?
I don't like the idea that networking helps you to get a job, because it somehow gives into the idea that your network is more important than your knowledge. And I think in the European Union, we have this idea that people who merit career chances if they get them, and it does not depend on your network. So I think if any one of you has the impression that just because of your network, or because you did not have a network, you did not get a job, I recommend all of you to just go to the ombudsman of your country or the organization. Of course, the network helps to know about opportunities. So without my network, I would not have learned about the EDPS that I work for now. I think it is important to understand what the network is for, and I would not encourage to rely on the network to get the job. Maybe you will be able to know about the job opportunities when you speak with more diverse people. That certainly is the case, but do not believe that because you have a great network, you will better perform in the competitions. And also for the traineeships, and there was also the question on traineeships. For the traineeships, you will not more likely get in the European Commission a traineeship spot. And the other question concerning the traineeships was about the working experience. And actually, I have also helped already with pre-selecting trainees for the Blue Book program. And I can tell you that working experience is relevant. It does not matter so much what kind of working experience you do. So if you would, let's try to find a good example. if you would work for, there was always the example with McDonald's. What about working experience at McDonald's? And it seems like the European Commission cannot discriminate against people because they have made their working experience at McDonald's. So what you do for working experience, where you gather it, is pretty much unimportant. But it is important that it is actual working experience and not just volunteering a few hours every week. And what is also relevant of how much working experience you have. And you need you need to have an actual program for longer than a few weeks in order to get points for it. And then again, if you have more than a year or so, you get also more points. So that helps a lot, of course.
Maybe I can add a practical detail there to what you said, Robert. Yeah, I agree. So basically, it doesn't really matter how much experience you have. For example, I was selected for the European Commission with not that much experience, basically. But what's important there, it might be not networking, but there were like only 2 days after I received the confirmation for the European Commission that I was selected in the Blue Book, when you actually had to sort of lobby on your own the head of units, so that you can get a step ahead, or like a step in the door. So yeah, it might not be like you network individually or like face to face, but you lobby or you develop your network through emails. If you guys, I don't know, Claudia was nodding, so maybe. And also another aspect is that, yeah, networking might not actually help you get a job, and actually it helps you know about jobs. But for example, in my case, like the last job I got here at the consultancy, I met this girl, the managing director, at a birthday party. So basically, yeah, it might not help you. Maybe, I don't know, Claudio or Tomas, we are putting a bit too much this networking in, too much spotlight on networking. But again, I want to stress that networking doesn't only mean like meeting face to face, which is why when I started applying in Brussels, I sent a lot of spontaneous applications. And so I encourage you, whenever you try and find like an opportunity here in Brussels, also try and send application to someone who's not looking necessarily for like, I don't know, your active jobs or somewhere else. Just have a stakeholder mapping with the companies or like where you want to work, and you contact them. This is another sort of networking. So yeah, maybe different spins on it.
And Tomas, what do you think about this?
Yeah, again, I agree with everything what was already said. I will have 2 remarks about the traineeship. Now I will speak more about the perspective of MEP office, but it has a general implication. The important thing is to be different. Claudio already said it, and I can see it here on weekly basis. Every week we get several applications, and the profile of the candidates is pretty much the same. Like a person can speak 2, 3, 4 languages, studied European studies, international relations, then did some Erasmus or studying abroad, has some experience from the government offices in their national country, maybe some Brussels experience, but it's not a difference. You must show that you have, for example, interest in some area, or that you are interested in some policy or something, and then it's really easy to recognize from the motivational letter that you are someone different. And even though we get a lot of applications, it's quite easy to pick the right person. Because we can see the interest. It's about the internships on the networking. Like I agree with Robert that networking won't bring you a job, but networking is quite important piece of puzzle in that. I have an example from a couple of weeks ago when my friend, she's an environmental lawyer, and she was applying to the commission, and she was asking me if I can brief her with some experience. I didn't know much about it, but I gave her contact to 2 people. One of them was working at that particular DG, and the other one was working in public affairs, lobbying in that area. And she got the job at the commission, and she was saying that basically our conversation, which each of them helped her a lot. And it's a story I can hear quite often with many of my friends. cannot be, it doesn't need to be direct networking, but it's good to know like who to approach for sure.
And I have one final question from Kristin.
Yeah, I would like to, I mean, please do not get the impression that people on the commission will then tell other colleagues that they have met this person already and this is a good person. I think what Thomas was explaining here is that people may learn about how the procedure will be of the hiring process. What is the actual challenge in the DG? What are the profiles and the soft skills that people are looking forward the most? It's about these small tricks to be better prepared, and you could just spend more interviews to do that experience also yourself. But this is not something that is super secret. And whenever people on the commission are asked, can you explain me what is the challenge in your everyday job? I think there's no secret, and many people will be friendly to help anyone who is asking that question. So again, this is not about nepotism and knowing the people. It's about the information.
And just to go to that final question from Kristin before we close off this roundtable.
Can I just have a quick follow-up on what Robert said, very quick?
Go on.
Just to make the two at the top complete, I think just to clarify things, what I said especially was about networking events in MEU, and I was really keeping it at the basis of MEU. What I think Thomas and Robert said, and I think is very important, is the other level of networking, which is not at events, is how you manage to exploit, I wouldn't say exploit, but manage to get the most out of the network you have. And that's how it is. When a certain opportunity comes in, you know someone that knows someone, and you just refer, maybe you should get in touch with them. And that really helps you. What Claudia said, I completely agree 100%. That is how the commission works. If you're in, for those who have already been in EPSO, if you're doing CAST, if you have the application for contractual agent and you still haven't been called, well, that's how recruiters will spot you. It's like being on a shipwreck on an island. You need to make a fire and be visible. So you do send emails. You do be a bit proactive and send emails to head of units you like to work in. You should already probably start doing this. You know, if you want to go to the commission or parliament, start looking, especially commission here, start looking through the heads of units, start seeing the things you would like to do and the units that interest you, and try to send an email to say, hello, I'm here. If you know someone who knows someone, contact them, because when something comes up, someone will tell you, hey, maybe you should talk to this guy because this is happening, and tell them you sent me, blah, blah, blah. And this is useful. And this is how you can later on bank on this. So, and you never know, somebody you met on MEU 5 years ago, 10 years ago, one day, if you're in the same city, you go for a beer and boom, they just drops in casually in the middle of a conversation, and that might actually get you access to then prove yourself on the basis of your knowledge, of your competence, of your skills to the right people. But yeah, you need to be visible, and you need to also be out there so you can find the right opportunities. So that's when networking as a word, maybe that as that part of the concept is actually relevant and is a part of life here in Brussels.
Now, just before I ask you guys that final question, does anybody else want to add a final point to what Claudio just said? Are we good? Okay. So from Kristin would like to ask, would you guys consider volunteering at Beta or at MEU's organizing as relevant work experience? I know that some people made a few comments on this here and there saying that if it was volunteering experience just a few hours a week, it didn't really count. But I think Kristin would like to have a more specific answer to her question. And I guess we can start with Tomas.
I'm not sure if I got the question right.
So would you consider volunteering, would you consider the work experience that someone may have volunteering at Beta or organizing MEUs as relevant work experience for a role in an MEP's office or the Commission or in the European whatever?
Yeah, definitely it's relevant experience. Like in my case, I remember that when I was applying for traineeship, I didn't had much working experiences. So I was always like putting Beta and organizing stuff into working experience. But as I got older, I put it to volunteering activities, if it answers the question. But anyway, at every interview, I was trying to explain how much time it took and so on, and to give the people the right impression.
course. Robert?
Yeah, I mean, depending on where you apply, there may be a definition of what working experience must encompass, and often it is being paid. So for instance, if you want to apply for a specialist competition at EPSO, and this is something I did, and because it is for specialists, there are less people applying, so there are higher chances to be successful. And there you also need working experience, and it must be paid. Otherwise, it is not working experience. So of course, this does not help here. I think also for the trainee selection at the commission, it is that people need to be paid for their working experience. There are points for volunteering. One can get both. One can get maybe work somewhere and get points for that, and then one can volunteer for beta and get points for that. But I do not think that for the Blue Book traineeship selection, it makes a huge difference if you have worked for half a year or if you have worked for 3 years within beta.
So,
I mean, let me be, actually, this is not entirely true. Once you're in the Blue Book, you need to be selected by people, and then they will look in the CVs and have interviews with the people. And then it may, of course, pay out when they see, oh, this person is super confident in speaking with people they have never met before to negotiate things. So it really depends on the procedure and on the job, if that is helpful or not. I think also for the NGOs, they have much more leeway to decide who they choose. And for them, it may be even better to have worked for a year managing a beta branch than having done job at a cashier at some supermarket. And for the commission, it would be again totally different because they look also at what kind of contract was it, for instance.
So based on that, my advice to Christian would probably be ask whoever you're working with to give you €1 so you can say you were paid for your work. But based on that, I mean, what would Claudio think? I mean, because you did a lot of organizing work and you've done quite well career-wise. So do you think that it would count as relevant work? What advice would you give Christian here?
Well, I guess that's the legal answer to everything, right? It depends. It depends of what you've done. Like Tomas had said, how much you've actually, pour yourself into an organizing role. But most importantly, I think depends on what you're applying for. And I think that nothing is a good replacement to a good background study of what your employer does, what your employer wants, and what do you have to offer. And I think this is where this plays a massive role. Robert just said, and I completely agree, sometimes it's paid experience, period. They don't care about skills. They care only about plain old working experience. And it's like what Tom said. Once you come out of university, we don't have work experience. So of course we need to play to our strong suits and use our volunteering capacities. Whatever we did in student unions, debating societies, youth NGOs, MEUs, MUNs, or whatever you've done, volunteering at the local food bank, all these things count because every employer understands if you're fresh out of university, there's only so much you can do. And the fact you actually use your university years to do more than just, and apologies, I'm going to insult anyone here, sitting on a classroom all day, going to the library, going home, repeats day after day after day, and you didn't engage in any extracurricular activities, that by itself speaks a lot. It does speak a lot about you. So it's never that positive when you've done your whole university career and you haven't engaged in these things. Maybe if you want to pursue work in academia, that's a solid solution for you. But if you really want to engage on the outside world, you need some additional skills, and this is how you show them. How they become relevant, regardless if it's paid or not to your employer. And that's where you need to see what your employer wants. Because organizing an event with 100 people plus for a week, anywhere, in an international working environment, in the context of the EU, to be honest, if you describe it like this, it could be Beta Europe, it could be Politico, it can be European People's Party, it could be whatever. You've done this, and you need to sell it, no matter if this was someone who paid you a lot of money or if you volunteer. The skills are there, regardless of how much it came into your bank account, and sometimes regardless of how many came out of your bank account. So what matters is the skills and how you can show them. If you have those skills and your employer wants those skills in someone, then you play to your strong suit and you make it count. And when it comes to MEUs, when it comes to Beta, there's so much to be counted. But yeah, that requires that art from you, which is you don't market it as a paying job. Paying job, sometimes one line in your CV, that's it. You need to prove nothing else. When it comes to volunteering, you need to come with a hell of a lot more to the table. But if you have those skills and you can demonstrate them, it can be a very powerful asset. It's the thing that makes you different. And at the end of the day, in a tight race, and they always are, it might just land you that job. So my advice is do it. If you have the opportunity to do it, just do it. Everyone, even if your parents tell you not to do it, your girlfriend tells you not to do it, or boyfriend, if your friends tell you not to do it, if your bank account tells you don't do it, because it would always be counted in your favor.
Okay, I believe we have literally 3 minutes left before we're all going to be kicked out of this room. So Claudia, would you like to make a final remark on this before we all say goodbye and go back to planning MEUs?
Is it me, Claudia, or Claudio? Claudia. Right. So yeah, actually, I wanted to add one quick thing on what Claudio said. Yeah, I would, and the other ones, please add it. I still have MEU on my CV, and I have almost 6 years of experience. So I have all my volunteering experiences in my CV, because that shows commitment. That shows you go out of your 9-to-5 job. That shows you know a lot. You get to know people. So yeah, please add it. Put a good spin on it. Most of skills are transferable, so yeah, you can use that in the interviews as well. Use it. Just to wrap up, maybe yeah, I can say MEU has been a great experience for me. I definitely encourage everyone, and I think everyone on this panel, I mean, all the attendees have something to do with MEU. I don't know, maybe, I don't know if you want a job in Brussels or not, but if you want one here, just as Claudia mentioned earlier, be visible, send your CVs, get to know people. Well, digitally right now, we are all digital now. Yeah, be confident. I mean, there are so many opportunities. It's only for you to go and get them in. That's all I can say.
All right, well, I think that's a pretty good point to finish this panel off on. Thank you to everybody for coming in with your questions and for listening to our panel of experienced experts. My main takeaways were: learn how to sell yourself if you're looking for an internship or a job, Kristin, and also to all you law students, stop hiding in the library like nerds and go to MEUs instead. There's better things out there. But in general, I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming. Thank you to our panelists. If anybody has any final words they'd like to say, we haven't been kicked off yet, so I think we may have a few minutes left. Go ahead and say it. Robert, Tomas, Claudia, Claudio. If you guys don't want to say goodbye, that is absolutely fine too.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for inviting us. If I can help any of you with anything, I'm looking now at Vincent, to whom I'm still owing some comments for a couple of weeks, and I'm terribly sorry for that. Yeah, feel free to get in touch with me, and I will help you as much as I can.
Yeah, same here. I mean, thank you so much for having us. I mean, this has been a great experience. I mean, for us, it's common to be on the other side organizing these things. It's a very weird experience to be on the other side, being the invited guest. So thank you so much for having us, and you're doing a great job. I mean, it's great to see Beta so active. So thank you, Beta Europe. Thank you, Kristin. Thank you to your Beta Europe think tank. Andrea, thank you, Julien, for amazing work, and to all of you who've joined, especially the new people here who've never done an MEU, that don't know us from anywhere, like us. Our panelists, I think we can say in pretty much confidence, we know like half of the people who are in this workshop in some
form, capacity, shape, or whatever we've engaged. It's not by chance. So join this amazing universe, and you won't regret it. So that's my takeaway. Thank you.
Claudia, Robert, would either of you like to make any final remarks?
Yeah, I would also like to thank you, and I obviously encourage everyone here, if they have any questions, they can reach out to us. Yeah, enjoy MEU, as Claudia said, join the universe.
Robert?
Yeah, I think it is very important that don't look too much when you decide what you are working on, what you want to do, on how you can get your next job. Just try to do what you think is the right thing, what you like to do, find a purpose, and then do whatever you need to do to achieve that purpose. I think that's a general advice, and I cannot stress it often enough. And I think this is something you also see in the CVs. There's nothing you can write to cover a CV where you see this person does not know the purpose yet.
And on that note, I think we're going to call it a day. Thank you again for coming, everybody. If you want to get in touch with everybody and on the panel, you can get in touch with them through Twitter, Facebook. Just look them up and send them a message. I'm sure they'll really appreciate it. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the symposium, and see you guys at the next MEU that happens in 2024 when this is all over. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thank you.